Today we're going to talk about wellness and what really wellness is. I want to start with a question. When I say the word wellness, what do you think of?
Well, I have a question for you. Why did the guy fall in the well? You didn't see that well.
Because you couldn't see that well.
But that's probably not the wellness we're going for. The wellness that I think of is probably like physical. Like, do I have a cold? Am I sick?
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
I think that I could go more to the emotional wellness, like social wellness and feeling good about yourself wellness.
I think of yoga.
That's fair.
Yoga or
that's completely fair.
Either one. Either one.
Welcome to Adulting Decrypted. We are your hosts.
I'm Gene, and I'm starting my first year of college.
I'm Ashton. I'm a music performer, composer, and educator.
I'm Gideon, a high school senior.
I'm Roscoe, the dad. Those are my three sons, and this is Adulting Decrypted, where we discuss ways to become adults and the things we need to know to be successful at life.
The way that we're going to bounce off the definition of wellness is a state of optimal health that encompasses like all the dimensions of well-being. And you touched on a couple of them, but I want to touch on 8 major components today, which are physical, intellectual, social, emotional, financial, occupational, environmental, and spiritual. So there's a lot to cover, but it's all pretty simple.
I like this because we're covering the whole gamut, and I think all of us focus on whatever we feel like we're lacking the most. Ashton might feel like he's missing out on yoga.
It's true.
I'm going, man, I'm kind of physically not feeling well the last week, for whatever reason. So I think when these 8, which you threw out there, are out of balance, I think we have maybe a check-off sheet that you can go look at and say, hey, how's my physical health? How's my mental health? So I like where you're going.
Starting out with probably the most simple, the one that comes to mind, at least for me, when I first think of wellness and when I'm first introduced to it, is physical. The health of our body. A healthy body weight, physical fitness. Are we sick for any reason? Are we physically able to do a bunch of things? Why do you think it would be important to have physical wellness?
I've shared with you guys and the listener a couple times that mine was mobility for 2023, my word, because I realized as I've been aging that I'm not as flexible and not as able to do things that I used to. And so being physically unwell, it was limiting me some of the stuff I could do. I just noticed this morning playing or was it this morning or yesterday morning? I don't know. Maybe I'm mentally not well. I can't remember anyways. We were playing pickleball, and I realized how much easier it was for me to just pick up the pickleball. Before I was leaning on my paddle or having to bend down to put my hand on the ground, I'm just bending, picking up the ball, and going. So I've noticed a difference. It's taken me a year and almost a year and 2 months to get there, but I've noticed a difference.
Yeah. And I love that you bring that up, because one of the things that can discourage us from trying to seek wellness is not that immediate gratification of like, oh yeah, I lifted weights today, so now I can be as strong as The Rock. Like, it's just not how that works. It's a constant progressing.
I'm bald like The Rock. Maybe I missed The Rock.
Yeah, you're one step there.
Yep.
One.
And then I need to get a tan. Other than that, I'm golden.
Yeah, and take steroids.
He's a natty.
No, he's not.
He's natural.
He's pissy and looks like that.
Yeah, it's because he's a beast. You're just jealous.
I'm not.
Because you're
actually jealous.
15 and you don't look like that.
True. Except it's not true.
You're not natty either.
Nope.
I don't know what that
Anyway,
He's taking anabolic
Gene,
steroids.
you better keep control of this right.
Yeah. So we mentioned a couple of things to help improve physical health, like playing sports like pickleball, going to the gym. Sometimes it's just going for walks can really help improve like physical health and physical fitness, and like eating right, all that kind of stuff kind of ties into physical wellness. Then the next step.
Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Ashton.
I was gonna say I've been thinking a lot about the walking thing. I haven't done it, but I was like, that might be good because the weather's been super good the past couple days. Been like 50s, 60s, and it's just been really pretty and nice outside. So every time I'm outside, I walk a little slower.
Yeah. And all that helps improve that physical. And it kind of ties into the next step, which is intellectual, that aspect of lifelong learning. Like a couple things that we could do, like listening to audiobooks, keeping up with the current events that are going on so you're intellectually there, and being engaged in wonderful, thoughtful discussions like this one. Good job, guys. We're being intellectually well.
That's crazy.
And you can do it too
Oh,
on
man.
adultindecrypted.com.
Wow.
But
Sounds like an ad if I...
Yeah, you guys are being a little bit sarcastic, but I think Gene's got a very valid point. Is dialogue is helpful, laughing is helpful, right? But to go specifically to intellectual, I listen to podcasts. I just geeked out on the whole pirates. We've talked a lot about pirates and like they're Pirates of the Caribbean and all this. Well, listening to all these guys' stories and realizing it's happened in less than a 30-year period is just wild to me. I learned a lot. So I think you're right, Gene. Listening to good audiobooks that help us stimulate our thoughts doesn't always mean self-help.
Yeah, I like that point a lot, Dad. And something that I just started doing like 2 days ago. So as background, I've spent a whole bunch of time on social media and just like on my phone the past couple days compared to just normal life because I've lost motivation at times. So whenever I get the urge to just get back on my phone, I just try and take 30 seconds of nothing because I want that instant dopamine hit of social media where it's just like exactly that, instant dopamine. And so the 30 seconds of just breathing helps me regain my thoughts a little bit, think more intellectually, and maybe make a different decision. And that's just a little thing that I've done that has helped me a bit.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And it's all about learning. So it could just be anything that helps us learn. Whether it is about some information that could actually be vital to learning about just something that happened back in the 1700s. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's all learning. It all helps us keep us intellectually fit. And then the next section I want to talk about is emotional. That's more of like how we feel about others and ourselves, our social skills, our relationship with others, kind of that self-esteem, and coping with the routine stress that we have to deal with.
Half of me expected Dad to respond first, but that's not going to happen. I do think it's an important skill set, and I think it's probably one of the more neglected and harder to train skill sets. While it is rising in popularity, I think it's also one that we know less about because there's like weightlifting gyms, but there's not like mental wellness, like community gyms. Like you have therapy and you have like clubs and stuff that you can go to. And maybe there is. Maybe I'm just not privy to that. But I don't know. There's a aspect about mental social wellness that is still almost a little taboo.
Like, just as an example, another way to state that is like a way to exercise your emotional wellness. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, or just like, because a lot of times competition drives innovation. And there's not really any sort of competition. You do the whole weightlifting thing, and you're always trying to break, your PR, or you're trying to, maybe you have fun competitions with your buddies about who's got the strongest muscles or whatever, or best looking muscles or whatever. You don't hear people going around and be like, yeah, man, I'm mentally stable. Like, I got you beat. I'm 110 mentally stable, and you're only at 85. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I totally get that.
there's just like a mystery aspect to it.
And sometimes we even fight for who is least mentally stable. Like,
That is
how much
true.
sleep did you get last night? I got 6 hours. Haha, sucker, I only got 4. So it's like, yeah.
So, just a quick question: have we talked about how to help ourselves in the emotional? It's emotional wellness. Is that what we're talking about? Social or emotional?
Emotional.
Emotional.
We
Yeah.
haven't talked about, like, right now, we've talked about it in past podcasts, but we haven't talked about, like, solving it.
Yeah, I'd really challenge us to go back and listen to like Jerem Ball's episode. We talked a lot about emotional health, but there is an aspect of emotional resilience. So I like that you said it was taboo, Ashton. At first, I was like, oh, I'm really offended by that. You know, as an older adult who's going, yeah, well, sometimes you just have to cowboy up, like the song I was talking about. But then there's other times that, yeah, life's hard and trying to figure it out sucks. And so to find that way to step back and go, okay, what works for me? I think your thing you're talking about just a second ago, get in with your intellectual, where you said, I need to take 30 seconds quiet time before I scroll to my next video. Decide, do I really need that dopamine hit, or is there another way to do it? So I think emotional wellness and emotional health is stepping back and looking for that help and tearing down some of those taboos behind it, because we're in a whole different environment than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Back when I was starting to doing some of your intellectual health wellness that you talked about, doing some of your physical. Tonight I was very stressed when I first got home from work, and I was like, oh, my brain is just mush. Well, I went and worked out and I felt much better. You know, so that's not the answer for everybody. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that looking at this balance of these 8 different areas might help us. I think they're really related. And to your point, I think we know the science of building muscle mass, even though I probably get 18 videos a day that pop up in my Facebook feed, how to lose belly fat, with 18 different ways to do it. I think that our mental health is probably similar, is that we don't have all the studies and all the science behind it. And then once we know that there's some facts, I think it's still going to be debatable. What might work for me won't work for Ashton. What works for Ashton might not work for Gideon. You know, there's just a lot of that. Like you today, Ashton mentioned going out in the sun, walking, looking at the sun, not literally, don't do the sun stare. But getting the sun on you is good for your soul. It feeds your soul.
Right.
And so it's an emotional wellness as well. Not just physical. It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a point I'm going to get to later, but they all are completely interconnected, which is really wonderful. And it kind of takes us to the next point, which is social. The developing and maintaining of those meaningful interpersonal relationships. So how could someone go about improving their social wellness?
Ways to not fear rejection, because I know that like a lot of times your mind will give you a whole bunch of excuses not to do something, in the social sense, not to go talk to that person or not to start that conversation with somebody you might know their name but haven't really said hi to a lot. And a lot of those excuses aren't rational.
You know, Gideon, I appreciate that. One other thing is, if we can share with the listener, you've had a rough couple days. Life's been hard right now, and that's not fun. It's not great. But you did something tonight. You went and served a group of people that are less fortunate, right? That have different disabilities. And when you came back from that, you were in a whole different headspace. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah. That in the gym really helped me out.
Yeah, so you noticed that. Well, and even last night when you were in it, you did your 100 pull-ups, and you're like, okay, I did something. I accomplished something. And I was like, this kid's nuts. It's 10:30 at night. Go to bed. but you did something that checked that off your bucket list. But tonight you came home in a whole different headspace, and it was very social.
Yeah, just not thinking about yourself.
Yeah, you went out and served. And I think that sometimes when we get in our headspace, a social experiment is to go find a volunteer group. Go dish up food at a homeless shelter. Go work at a food pantry. Those things are free, and they're always looking for help. Just another idea. It's not always having to break out of your comfort zone and going, okay, I'm going to go talk to that girl over there. I'm going to go talk to that guy. Sometimes it's just going, okay, I'm scared, but I'm still going to go volunteer. It's also reaching out to old friends. You know, it was great. I saw a high school buddy, Scott Bell, who we've had on. We went over to his house and had dinner and visited with his family. It's super good for my social soul.
And I love that you bring that up in social. It's not just those people that we immediately think of when we're like, oh yeah, my little social circle. It's all those that we interact with, those people that we can serve and show love in these different ways. And so the next one is a little bit more monetary, the financial side of wellness. And it put simply, it's just the ability to live comfortably on what you're getting and being able to save for emergencies. That is what it's defined as, is financial wellness. It's not considered being like, oh yeah, I'm superly over successful. It's, hey, right now I can live comfortably. I don't have to be stressed about my financial side. Like that part's well. What are your thoughts on that?
We talked about how to ask better questions. Gene and I spent a little bit of time, because one of the things I've noticed, listeners, I say right when I'm asking a question.
Right.
And I had to take out 48 rights. Actually, I had to take out 43 of them because the other 5 of them were done correctly.
Directional?
Well, not necessarily, but I would be agreeing with you. I'd say, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But not right. Anyways, great question, Gene. Financial wellness is very specific to the individual, just like mental and emotional health. I would imagine if in Ashton's shoes, you're starting out a career, financially, there's times, if I'm not too bold to share, but you're like, I'm all over the place. I'm just trying to get enough money to eat and car rent, you don't have a car payment, you've paid it off, but you're going, there's so much and it's coming at me so fast. Versus me, I'm at a different stage. And yeah, do I have emotional stress about money? Sure, sometimes. But Gene, I think it's trying to define what your definition of success and then live within those means. Because I know people that are making a lot of money are not financially well, in the sense that it keeps them up at night going, how do I balance my checkbooks? How do I live off of this? And I don't make enough, or my wife and I are fighting about it. So I like that you said it's comfortable. It's what matters to me, the significant other I choose to go through life with. So I think every one of these, Gene, is tough. None of this wellness is easy.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really individual. And so I guess the reason why we're talking about it is to try and get people to think about what they can do for themselves. Not necessarily just broad think about the topic while that is included, but also just how to improve their wellness.
And I feel like it's with all these points of, hey, like, what like social state are you good at? Because some people, they could be friends with 100 people and be texting 30 of them daily, and they're like, you know what, I don't feel socially well at this. Other people, if they had that, like, wow, yeah, I'd be overwhelmed. Like, I don't know if that's my spot. And you got to find what's well for you. The next one, it feels kind of connected to financial, but it is slightly different. It's occupational. And that's the satisfaction that you have at your job or that you're doing for work. Are your career goals consistent with your personal values and your personal aspirations in life? What does that make you think of?
Well, I know that we've definitely had an episode on this with Johnny Hulse. So I know that a lot of insight can come from that episode as well as most of these topics that we bring up, if not all of them, have episodes tied along. So for the listener, that's a resource you could turn to if you have any more questions. But I can't remember what I was going to say other than that.
I liked Jason Hewlett asked us all what we wanted to do, and Ashton's like, "Oh, I want, I'm composing," and Gideon at the time was BMX and then social media influencer, and Gene went, "Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just getting ready to go on my mission. I'm not really thinking about it." And Jason goes, "Well, what don't you want to do?" And I thought that was pretty powerful. So for your occupational wellness, I'll be honest, I think there's times that you just have to go to work and not necessarily find fulfillment in it. You just have to work because you got to take care of your financial wellness and some of your other stuff. And then I think there's times that you can go to work and you're like, yes, I'm really adding value. For me, that's a big one, is adding value and helping others see where they fit in a company. I think that's really big for me, and I get really juiced by it, but I can't always do that. Sometimes I have to go to work and do spreadsheets and get lost in numbers, and it sucks, so, but I know that there's enough of my occupation that brings me success and that feeling of I'm doing something good. I'd imagine with your career right now in the high schools, you're like, yeah, there's parts of this that are just freaking awesome. And then there's other parts of this that if I never had to do it again, it would be too soon. So, and I think that's fair for all. I know that you've written a blog post about this on how to find the job you love. Any insight on that?
Yeah, thanks, Dad. I wonder how you knew about that.
He's just that good.
I actually have it open already. That's kind of crazy, but just along with wellness, it's the first point that he even talks about in the blog is self-discovery and self-assessment. It's like, what is going to work for you? Not what's going to pay the most, what's going to make your parents happy, but it's like, look at yourself, that man in the mirror, like, along with what Dad said as well, what makes you feel like you have a purpose.
And then my other advice is don't get stuck in one area. As you're going through college, if you realize now, Gene, you're a sophomore. No, are you even a sophomore? Freshman? You just started?
Yep.
So as a freshman, if you were like, oh, I'm really committed to this, and then in 2 years you change, that's okay. I'm still a fan of getting the degree. I don't almost said it right. I'm a fan of getting the degree. It doesn't matter what it's in. Finish the degree. And right now, in our current environment, you can reinvent yourself multiple times in your career. And your desire might change. Your reason for doing something might change. Your job might go away. So be willing to look at what you enjoy or what you could enjoy.
The next one, I don't think we've talked about. I was gone for 2 years, but the next one I want to talk about is environmental wellness. And that's like how we affect the environment around us and how the environment around us affects us. Like, are we throwing our trash just in the middle of the road? Or are we making sure it's getting taken care of and put in the right spot? Do we like the environment that we're around? Like, is it affecting us in a negative way? Like, do we see a lot of bad things and it puts us in a bad attitude? Or is it, you know what? I walk around like, man, sunshine's great. I love like looking at the mountains around me.
Yeah, I like that you pointed out that it's sometimes our physical surroundings outside, but I think it also can be the environment that what state is your car in or your bedroom in or your, don't tell anybody, but our garage is in, right? That's the environment that you're around. Does it elicit the feeling that you want in it?
I think an interesting point that you brought up, Gene, is how we affect our environment around us. Like you said, throwing trash in the middle of the street. I think it could kind of tie back to the social aspect that we've talked about of not just thinking about yourself, but also thinking about those around us and how that trash might affect somebody around us where they're like, oh, well, now I have to pick it up. Because you throwing away your trash is a way of showing that you're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the environment around you and the people around you. And I think that could tie into wellness very well.
Thanks. The next one I want to talk about is spiritual wellness. Now, at first, when I say this, you might get a little taken aback and be like, oh, yeah, well, we don't really want to talk about religion, and because like everyone will believe differently. But spiritual wellness is the sense of purpose in our life. We can find that purpose in many different ways. It can include religion, and it also includes like helping others, like service, altruism, and enjoying the nature, just something that can spiritually uplift us. It may not be in the typical spiritual way.
Yeah, I'm probably not. I struggle with this concept a little bit of between spiritualism and church. And if I understand the statement, Gene, correctly, is, do I take time for my soul, right? Do I take time for the deeper me? I think that's that's important. Is one of the 8 points of this to keep up my wellness roof. For me, it's prayer, right? Is one of the things that I realize when I'm not doing and asking for help, because that feeds my soul.
Ashton, what's one thing that that you feel like helps you grow spiritually.
Hello. If you're listening to this right now, that means you're currently listening to an episode of Adulting Decrypted. And let me just say thank you. My name's Ashton, one of the hosts of Adulting Decrypted, and I wanted to steal a quick second of your time to do a shameless little plug. If you've listened to our podcast for any sort of time, you know that we talk about a bunch of different stuff all about adulting. Because our goal is to help individuals in this task we call adulting. Now, we have just revamped the way that we do this. If you go to adultingdecrypted.com, you can see all of our episodes sorted out by category. We've sorted it into financial, practical, emotional, social, and things just for fun. So, if any of those categories are of particular interest to you right now, you can go onto the website, look through there, and see all of our episodes that correlate with that specific thing. This website's completely free to use. It's just another tool for our listeners to find things that are more important to them now. So, for example, if I was looking at it, I'd scroll through and say, hey, you know what? I want to see what the Adulting Decrypted crew has talked about socially. Well, one of our first episodes, season 1, episode 3, how do I talk to people? That's where we talked about all how to talk to people. So if that's something you want right now, you can go find that right now. Also in this one, season 3, episode 15, the power of a humble mediator, where we talked to one of my old bosses about his business as a mayor, also as a small theater owner. Some really cool stuff. So, if you're looking for a better way to organize through all your self-help podcasts, try adultingdecrypted.com and enjoy the rest of the episode. I think it's kind of cliche because it's kind of what I say a lot, but I think of music as a thing as just kind of like, and it's got to be the right type, it's got to be the right genre, it's got to be the right thing, because like there's music out there that's just like party hard and you can enjoy it, but there's also music out there that's been created by people that's meant to be an uplifting thing, an uplifting moment, and I do produce songs and stuff, and I generally wouldn't consider my music uplifting necessarily. At least the most recent batch of stuff that I've done. However, I was recording like a couple nights ago, and I got something that I was listening to, and I was like, this is interesting. This is a side of music that hasn't come out of my production before. But I'd also been spending a lot of time listening to artists who I think share spiritual messages and uplifting messages. Listening to those sorts of things can just kind of give you a state of almost like meditation as well. Like that's kind of what I use those things for sometimes. It's just kind of like an unwind moment. And I've used that like walking around, and I've used that just like laying on my floor, just, listening to music and just kind of taking in the energy that an artist is trying to share. It's just one way.
Thank you. And Dad, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Wow, that's awesome.
Sweet. And so that's all 8 points. And one thing that we kind of talked about in the middle, but I want to readdress again, is the more properly we have addressed all 8 of these points, the more well we are in our general wellness. We can have certain ones that are at higher spots than others. Some people can be super physically and socially well, but they may not be doing well in their occupational or spiritual wellness. And that's just, everyone's at different spots, and so we never really know. But as long as we focus on continuing to grow our wellness, we can get better. And how do you feel like they work together? Because some of them are pretty different in most people's mind, like spiritual and financial wellness. But how do you feel like those work together?
I think it's all slices of the same pie, really. There's also a concept that we've talked about before in like relationships, where it's the relationship slider. I don't remember what the episode's titled or who hosted it. But basically the principle is Like when you get deeper into a relationship with someone, like there's different levels that these sliders should be. So like you should be more comfortable talking to a person than you should be sharing like intimate moments with them. Like you have to build a relation in order for it to be a strong and stable relationship. And I don't know if I see a progression in these wellness steps, so to speak. Like you want this one so high before you work on this one. But I feel like the overall term of wellness can be derived from working on different wellness points at different times and increasing the strength of those and kind of balancing them. Because there will be times where physical wellness is more important to you than environmental wellness. But if you go on an environmental wellness streak, all of a sudden you're on a financial wellness, and you can kind of like build them up from different spots. So I think they're all the same thing, and I think some lead better to others than others, but I think they can all work together.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I think for spiritual, very specific, I liked where you went there, Ashton, with it. You know, and they're all slices of the same pie, and how you do the slide. First, I was thinking a hamburger. I guess I'm hungry. Not necessarily like a dial slide,
Right.
Where you slide those up.
Well, in my music brain's mixing boards.
Right. Is that where you're at, Gideon?
I know exactly what he's talking about because I think I hosted this episode. I don't know what it is, though.
Also, I just thought of another thing. Obviously, you can't focus on all points of wellness at the same time. I think trying to focus on all of them at the same time is probably more detrimental than helpful. But going back to me thinking like a musician, there's only so much space of stuff that we can hear. And sometimes the melody's more important, sometimes the piano's more important, sometimes drum set. And if you slid them all up to 100%, it would just be chaotic, loud sound. But there's a balancing effect where you can say, well, I want this one down here and this one down here, and those little pieces all can equal 100%. So for someone, physical wellness might be more important, but for someone else, it's like, hey, I've got to have my mental wellness in check. And that's just their different mix of wellness, I think.
Yeah, so what I liked about those two that you just mentioned is your physical, you mentioned physical wellness and mental wellness. Sometimes they're intertwined with me. So, For example, your example of going out for a walk and being in the sun, for me, if I'm going out pedaling my bike, like if you say, hey, let's go exercise, and I go pedal a bike in a gym, or I can go pedal my bike down the mountain, I promise I'm going to get more wellness from being outside riding my bike, even though on my calculator of how many calories I burned, they might be exactly the same, right? My heart rate might be the same, but I'm able to double dip in it, and it feeds not just, I'll be honest, it probably even feeds my soul, right? There might be some spiritual aspect of being up in the mountains, you know, so there's times that, and I might be in the right environment, you know, so it might all actually kind of all blend together, except maybe financial because I'm spending money on a bike. Or I'm excited because I'm like, hey, I've used this bike now for 350 rides. And so it really might, all 8 of them might come into play. But to your point, Ashton, they're in the right volume set that it makes music for me, right? Yeah. It's not all drum or all loud or all, but it plays well with each other. And there's other times that I know when I'm physically ill, like when I don't feel good and I'm tired and I've got a cold, then my mental, I'm going, man, I just want to quit, you know, and then sometimes even my spiritual suffers from that, you know. So I think sometimes when you're having these moments of doubt and concern, can I make it as an adult, that you need to step back and go, okay, what's missing out of these 8? What do I need to spend a little bit more time on that I might be lacking? Because you're right, Ashton. You can't focus. When you focus on everything, you focus on nothing. So you've got to take a step back and say, I want to focus on this one for the next week, and that's going to help me improve the other 7.
Thank you for that comment, Dad. I really love it because they really are interconnected. They really all do affect each other. Because the more we are physically well in the other areas, the more we're able to focus on those other areas that we're not as strong at. And so we're not more in the fight or flight. We can really feel well in all that we do.
Thank you, Gene. And just as a callback, a lot of these topics have episodes correlated with them. So if you wanted to ever go back, our episode finder is super nice on that. Episode search, I guess is what it's called on our website. You can just Control F, find different topics that you might be looking for, or scroll through by season or category. And we would love to hear your thoughts as well if you wanted to add to our Reddit or DM us on any of our social medias. We'd love to hear what you think.
All right, I'll start
I do
recording
like your
then,
background,
and then
Ashton.
I'll
It looks
pop
good.
on over to the other spot. And
Sorry, does it add any value for you to like have your screen shared? Oh wait, no, don't do that.
We
I
don't
lied.
do that. Oh,
You have a
it
choice.
wouldn't matter, and it would mess up everything else.
Yep, I realized. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Adult and Decrypted. We really enjoyed having this week's conversation, and we hope you did as well.
If you ever want to comment on a topic, you can send us a message to our website, adultingdecrypted.com, our email, adultingdecrypted@gmail.com, or through our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts at adultingdecrypted.
If you have any topics for the show that you would like us to talk about, or if you are a parent and want us to talk about something your kid should know, send us a message on any of the accounts mentioned. If you would like to be a guest or have an idea for someone you think we should have on our show, feel free to send us an email detailing your thoughts to adultingdecrypted@gmail.com. Adulting is teamwork.
We have merch. If you want to show off your Adulting Decrypted pride, check out our website, adultingdecrypted.com, or our partner website with shop.spreadshirt.com/adulting-decrypted. Lastly, if you enjoyed the show, please consider supporting us on our Patreon at Adulting Decrypted. Along with the benefits that come with our Patreon, and trust us, there are some pretty good ones in there, you will not only be helping us continue in the effort to make great content, but you will be part of a community of individuals all trying their best to adult. We appreciate you listening, enjoying, and leaving your positive reviews. Now, the special song from Gene and Gideon.